So I think I'm ready. Sounds like I'm on. So during Stephen's comments, Mark Samsel turned to me and said, you know, if you have former students in the audience, you know what that means, don't you? What's that? It means you're getting old. Yeah, well, I don't know near as many old people as I used to, but we're still moving. We're grateful to be here. When we got the call, Stephen asked would we come by and just share what God's doing in Ukraine that we get to be a part of. We were excited to say yes. We want to say thank you, and as I share this little report, this update, I hope you will feel like you're right there with us, because you are. And I hope that you will be encouraged and excited about what God's doing. And I keep using that phrase, what God is doing, because that is really the right perspective. I mean, we get a call and we go. Other people are living the life that God called them to, and sometimes it seems like we're just going along. But we get a chance to see what God is doing and be a part of it, and it's really, really exciting. So just a couple of things before I get into a report. I have 4 pages of notes here, but don't worry, this is not what I have to say, it's what I'm not supposed to say, because when I start talking about these things, and then the memories start to flood in about who's there and how they came to faith, and it's like, only God could do this. We try, we do our best, but we're not doing this. We just show up. And so I hope that perspective comes through about everything that we report. So I'm going to real quickly cover our ministry that will touch on a lot of what is happening in Ukraine, some of which this congregation has a direct part in. And I hope you will be excited about that. Yes, we weren't planning to be here. We were scheduled to be back in Ukraine 3 different times now. But the situation of factors, mainly COVID, and this latest return was blocked by the fact that Ukraine is now the #1 COVID hotspot of all the nations in Europe. And it's out of control. We were counseled, just wait till it calms down a little bit. So we're getting zoomed out, as Mark says, by continuing our work. But let me share with you what we're called to, what we're doing, what God's doing in Ukraine. And I'm going to go quickly through this. And what you see on the screen, there's a pretty bold statement in the middle of that. God is moving a whole nation. Now, lots of people give reports and they talk about God's going to take over this whole country, and I understand that, and I really try to resist overstatement. But there's a reason. There are reasons why there are more churches in the nation of Ukraine than all of Russia, Eastern Europe, and Western Europe combined. And some of those factors are coming to light. Although things have changed since we first went in, not long after communism collapsed, when we started the early work, there's been some changes in the nation of Ukraine and in their culture. There is still this huge open door and this resonance. We find it when we're riding with an Uber driver. We have a brief conversation. When we meet people in our neighborhood, maybe some I'll slip and share with you about in just a minute. Just all kinds of university students. When we meet them and have the discussions, we can see it. And so let me share with you real quickly some of the specific things where this is playing out. I hope I do this right. Map of Ukraine. We live now in Kyiv. That's in the central top part. And you'll see to the right, the lines, that's where Russia invaded and took over that part of Ukraine, plus Crimea. And you're probably aware Russia just had 85,000 troops and a lot of tanks and things on the border with Ukraine. I understand they're about to take some of those back. There's a variety of political reasons for that, but that's just part of world politics. But Ukraine means Middle Lands because it's right in between all of these empires. It's still a very important strategic location. Our mission plan, when we were called in 2018, we wanted to emphasize 3 things, and a lot of this is done in conjunction with existing ministries that are there that called us to ask us to come help. But we want to help plant and grow and strengthen churches. We'll show just a little bit about what that's about. We want to expand the outreach to orphans. One of the greatest things our brethren did when they went was to serve the orphans, those without protection, those that needed medical help. And if I remember, and I manage my time, I'll share with an incredible story, maybe my one story tonight at the end about how God used this. And then we are there to assist other ministries in multiplying their efforts. This is a little different than what's considered traditional mission work, but Denise and I have had for almost 15 years now a consulting business to help mission groups, nonprofits, and churches in their organization development, their organizational structure, in their marketing, in their fundraising, and their strategic direction, their strategic planning. When we arrived in Ukraine, we received within the first 2 weeks 4 calls from leaders of some of the large mission efforts that are already there saying, things have changed, we need to be able to go to the next step, will you come and work with us? So we're doing that in Ukraine as well. So church planting and growth. We're going to talk for just a minute about the effort from downtown Kyiv, about our neighborhood, and then an effort throughout Ukraine. So English, conversational English is of huge interest still in Ukraine. And so one of the things that we did was to go to a university close to the downtown and just pass out flyers, said, we're going to meet on Saturday morning, here's the location. If you'd like to come and just practice your English, then, you know, here we are. Come meet with us. We had 43 show up out of one promotion. And on the right, you can see one table of the class of conversational English. And so we maintained a really good group of, solid group of college students. And on the left, you see what we do is leave the morning lessons, and we'll go have lunch. And at lunch, we're sitting across the table, and you know how it goes. We build a relationship. Where are you from? What are you majoring in? Why are you here? Why are you interested in learning English? What do you plan to do with your life? We spend about 2 hours with those kind of conversations every Saturday in a row. And so this is one of the big open doors in lots of ways. I want to tell you about all the other ways that can be used, but that's one of them. Now, in our neighborhood, we're helping to plant the church and expand the church there. And here is a short video we made to let you see what our neighborhood's like, what some of the people are like there, and some of what we're doing. So if I can do this correctly, watch this short video.
Greetings, family and friends.
Hello, everybody. Here we are in Ukraine. And behind us, you can see our neighborhood and can see that it's a big neighborhood.
And today we just wanted to share with you, and we're going to go for a walk and go in closer so you can meet some of the people in our neighborhood and see the good things happening there. So here we are in the heart of our neighborhood. This playground is one of our favorite places. It's always full of children laughing and playing and herds of moms with baby strollers. Young families are the core of this community, and they're surrounded by grandparents, merchants, university students, construction workers, and it's a busy place. Many of these people are from the war-torn East, and they've come here to remake and start their lives over. We love our neighborhood, and we are really excited about what God is doing in our relationships with these people, our neighbors.
As we've gone about our daily lives here, God has connected us in some unique ways with some of the people here, like the butcher who claims he can get us brisket.
I hope so.
Well, me too. And the baker and the manager of the pub, the florist, and others. God has gone before us here, and he's gathering his church. And here we are. That's our building right behind us where we live.
It's on the 7th floor, and the view from our window is wonderful. We look out often and just pray over the neighborhood.
And in the building right next door is where the community ministry center will be and where the church will meet.
So here we are next door to our apartment. The entire bottom floor of this building is designated for the community activity and ministry center for this entire neighborhood. And we are excited to see what God has planned for this space.
We're looking forward to all of the children and the families and the Bible studies and the English improvement studies and all of the things that can be done to minister to the people here to help establish the fellowship of God in this place.
So as you can see, there's thousands of people live here, much opportunity. God's at work.
Hope you enjoyed the trip through the neighborhood, and thank you for your prayers. Please keep praying for us, for the plan of the church, and for the good people here. From our 7th floor window, we can see 4 other apartment developments that size or bigger that are being constructed. And so this is a really popular area, and the pictures didn't even do justice to the number of young families and children there are. And so, yes, there are plans underway to reach out to them, use this whole bottom floor that the church owns. Opening doors throughout all Ukraine. On the left is Ali, our main Uber driver for a while. He's a Muslim from Turkey. When we prayed, when we had lunch one day, we invited him to have lunch when we were out on a trip, and he got emotional and said, do you do this all the time? Whole story there. I'm about to get off, so I'll stop. On the right are at the university, the main teacher training university in Ukraine, there in Kyiv. I was asked to come teach, which led to some other opportunities. I have signed an agreement with the university to be able to teach some in their curriculum and to also build a program in conjunction with the university, which means I have access to all the students, all their graduates, and people in town. I can teach whatever I want to. So this is another big open door. One of the ways in which the church is spreading across the country is, on the left side, you see Sasha Prokopchuk. He's the preacher for the nationwide television program that's broadcast 3 days a week. And he invites people to write in and ask for Bibles, biblical literature that EEM provides, and to ask questions. And so on the right is his wife, Vika, and she runs the response center. And they're sending out thousands upon thousands of Bibles and biblical literature. In fact, one of the things about COVID is it's resulted in increased leadership and double the number of requests for biblical information and dialogue. So that's part of what they're doing. And people come to church planting seminars, they call them, where regular viewers and those that are doing Bible correspondence by the mail are invited to come in person for a weekend. So it's a mixture of viewers who are not yet Christians but serious students, new Christians, some that are older. This is one of the recent ones. And this always happens, usually in multiples, at every church planting seminar. And then they take us seriously and they go home and they say, okay, they told me that now that I've become a Christian, I need to teach others about God. All right, so they go knocking on their neighbor's door and they say, I need to serve my fellow man. And the brethren recommend you start with the orphans. So they go back and they start benevolent work. And they, through this methodology, many churches, house churches now, like we read about in the New Testament, have sprung up all across the country. So we're involved in some and helping them in this unit and this effort. And then the orphans. You know James 1:27, pure religion, visit the fatherless. And so those without protection is what fatherless means. And so we are involved in working with several of the efforts over there, ministries that reach out to orphans and children at risk. And you can see some pictures of them up here. That pair of boots was, there's a great story there. Here's Denise and Vanya. The word's always presented to the orphans. And so the outreach to orphans has given the church a great reputation in Ukraine. And again, if I can manage my time and tell you the story, maybe I can illustrate just how great it is here in just a few minutes. So I mentioned a while ago about part of our ministry is assisting other ministries in multiplying their efforts. We feel like that if we can help other ministries increase and expand their good work, then the kingdom overall is expanded. And so we think we can make a contribution to that by using what God has given to us to help them to expand their efforts and their reach. And we do it through organization development, strategic planning, marketing, fundraising. We do this through the vision seminars, other kinds of meetings and discussions and consulting over there to help them think about what vision do you have? What vision has God given you? What could happen in Ukraine for spreading the kingdom? And what would it take? And we start talking and they start saying things. And there's a lot of excitement among brethren in Ukraine. The work that has been done by some people here, other brethren in Ukraine, there's been a foundation that's been laid, a good, solid foundation that's been laid. And I think that it's really timely to build on that further. And we've got some excited, very capable brethren in the process of doing that. one example of this is UBI, or Ukrainian Bible Institute, that I know you're very familiar with. I know Robert Waller, I think, is still teaching classes on Zoom for UBI. In fact, I was walking around the neighborhood the other day and said, I'm in front of Robert's house. I went and knocked on the door, and he came, and we talked for a while about that. But this is a picture of, we were asked by UBI to come do one of our 3-day vision efforts, seminars, and there we are doing that. And Brandon Price he put a paragraph about it in the newsletter of UBI. And I don't know if you can read it or not, but just tells that we were there and we had the seminar and seemed to go well, and things were already moving along. I'm not at liberty or have the time to give you the details, but I can share with you that Denise and I are very excited about UBI, what they've done already, and what they're positioned to do, and what their dreams and aspirations are, and their discussions. And they are, in our judgment, positioned to be, how to say this, they are positioned to have a tremendous impact on the furtherance of the gospel in Ukraine. And so I think you're going to be hearing more about that soon, and it's something to look forward to and be really excited about that. God is moving the whole nation. Part of the reason that Denise and I think this is in our history of being in Ukraine, going in, we never lived there until the last couple of years, but we would go many times. We would go into the camps and into the schools and other places. We would talk to the teachers and the counselors and the children. And we could hear, we could feel in our discussion, we could see in their body language, we could see in the things they said, that they were hungry for a moral basis, something really to live for and live by. I'll tell this story because it's real short. But meeting with a group of the directors of orphan camps, and we were talking about, well, we had a good experience. Do you want other teams to come? We bring our Bibles. And we were discussing things, and so I just asked, I said, why are you doing this? We thought we were enemies. We're bringing the Bible in, used to be communist. Why are you doing this? About 30 seconds of dead silence. I thought, oh man, I've just undone any good that might have happened. And Olga, who teaches physics in her high school, spoke up and said, it is because we're tired of looking at the empty eyes of our children. You people are the only ones we hear about talking about loving your enemy, and we need that. And many other interactions, many other ways in which we could tell that Ukraine was on the move, and God was directing this. Okay, I'm going to tell this story about what happened with UBI, and it's about UBI, but it also illustrates a lot of the things that I've been talking about. And then following that, if it's okay, I'd like to entertain questions of whatever you're interested in about the work in Ukraine. So UBI is unique in that I think it's the only ministry in Ukraine connected to the church that has nationwide registration. You have to get registered with the government. You have to have some stamp of approval to operate. Most of our ministries, they have them from the state, from their local area, and they're going by the law. But UBI was able to get national registration. Here's the way it happened. When UBI started teaching, they not only taught about the Word of God, taught the Word of God, they said, we need to live this. And so the students at UBI would go out, and instructors as well, they would go out and they would work in the orphanages. They would serve the orphans, and they would take in food, clothes, they would take in medical, they would spend time with them. And then in the area where UBI was, in the Donetsk area, they had an orphanage a hospital for AIDS babies. There were 400 babies with AIDS in that hospital. And the hospital was overwhelmed. They would go through, the staff would walk through, they would change diapers, they would feed, they would cover them with a blanket. Their blankets are what we would consider thin dish towels that lay over the babies. It's cold in Ukraine, Then Then they'd go on to the next one. Then they'd start on the other end and come back. They didn't hold the babies. They didn't play with them. They didn't have time. So our brethren went, holding babies, helping the staff, feeding, taking care of them. Just anything that was needed. Oh, your windows are drafty? We'll ask some of our American brethren for money. We'll fix those windows, etc., on and on. So came the time for the application to get the registration. So they appeared before the magistrate, pleaded their case. The magistrate immediately said, request denied. No, we do not give our educational system over to anybody else, especially foreigners. And I was told at that point there was about 30 seconds of dead silence. Nobody moved, nobody left. And somebody from the audience spoke up and said, but these are the orphan people. More silence. Somebody else spoke up and said, these are the AIDS babies people. More silence. Somebody else spoke up and said, just give them the registration. And that's what was done. So in God's wisdom, when he said, pure religion, to visit the fatherless, those without protection, and the widows, who can't do a thing for you in return, that demonstrates God's love in a way that most people haven't seen. They weren't aware of it over there. And it makes the teaching that's done more real, doesn't it? More ready to listen. Okay, so that's my one story. All right, so we have some time. I have left out a whole lot. I hope I've given you some sense of what we're doing and what God is doing there, because he really is moving. So are there some questions about Ukraine, about the work, about things you've heard? I'd be glad to try to entertain that. Okay, so Mark asked for a quick kind of history of UBI and how it started and what happened and where they are now and why they're there. So Chris was the first director. I believe he was followed by Doug Reeves. And honestly, folks, when Chris was going into Donetsk in Ukraine and some of the other brethren, I was going into Siberia and Russia, as you know. And so what I realized was none of us know what we're doing. I mean, this is a post-communist society. How do you present the gospel to people that are taught there's no God and all that? I mean, we have our proofs and, you know, all the arguments for the existence of God, and that was used and was real helpful. But UBI, Chris was the first director. There was a lot of evangelism going on, a lot of teaching. There were a lot of students, and it was started. Now, Donetsk was the Jerusalem, still is the Jerusalem, because they had to leave it, of Ukraine. You know, Eddie Clore from Harding University organized a campaign and took 207, it was a rolling campaign over 6 weeks in the summer. He took 207 Christians from around America that he recruited, and they went in and they had, depending on who you talked to, at least 1,500 baptisms. People did some follow-up. They organized congregations. There ended up being 26 congregations right in the Donetsk area in the suburbs. And UBI, and so brethren in Memphis, Tennessee said, how are we going to handle this? I mean, who was expecting hundreds and hundreds, over 1,000 baptisms of new Christians? And so they decided one of the things we needed to do is start a school to train preachers, church leaders, to fill the churches. And so that's what was done. Started by a group in Memphis. After a while, they realized we may not know as much about running a school as we thought, so let's talk to Sunset. Sunset got involved. Here comes Chris, followed by Doug Reeves, I believe. And then J. Don Rogers, J. and Mary Lee Rogers, spent 19 years, did great service. I used to sit on my trips in the kitchen area, the break area there at UBI when it was in Donetsk, and just watch people come in. This person's from this city, from another city, this part of Ukraine. It was kind of the crossroads. It was the touchstone of the church in Ukraine. Great service there. Even though it wasn't official, it was very effective. And so that went on, and over time they had this old dilapidated building that they were able to buy and refurbish, and things were going great. And then Russia invaded in 2014, and people escaped with what they could throw in their car and leave. The decision was, what do we do about UBI? And it was quite a significant consideration, to say the least, but they decided, well, we can't stop this. So we're going to move to Kyiv. And the staff that had lived, their parents, they grew up in Donetsk. I mean, this is their roots. They moved to Kyiv, and they had to find places for people to live. They had to find a place to meet. They had to find a place for classes to take place, and all of that in conjunction. And they had to get people used to going to Kyiv and not Donetsk, and overcoming the tremendous sense of loss and disruption. Like Sasha Prokopchuk, the preacher on national television, he and his family packed one suitcase, I believe it was. They jumped in the car, and they were on the road for 2 weeks before they found a place where they could rent. Just driving here, spend the night here, spend the night there in their car. And that happened with a lot of brethren. So it does remind me of Acts, when the persecution came, and they were scattered. And they didn't want to, but they went. And what did they do when they went? Scripture says, as they were going. This was not a planned evangelistic campaign. But as they were going, they talked to people about Jesus. Well, that happened in Ukraine. There are churches in Ukraine, places in Ukraine now that might not have ever been there had not our brethren been forced to go. So moving to Kyiv has its pluses and minuses. Plus is it's a capital city. You've got more resources there. It's kind of central, easier for people to get to. Some of the cons are it's 3 times as expensive to be in Kyiv as it was in Donetsk, especially when you don't own your own building. And so they have they found a facility. It's on the east side of the river toward where Boryspil Airport is. They have regular, steady more students coming in, and they are training them. They're going out. And yes, the students today are going out and filling pulpits, but they're doing much more than that. They are becoming great servant leaders. They are starting ministries that are having great impact in serving people in Ukraine. And so that's some of the pluses and minuses. Being at Kyiv is well located, but it's 3 times as more expensive, which really gets in the way of doing as much of the teaching and training and student recruitment and other things that they would like to do and that they could do. So that's the 100-yard dash version. Do I need to fill in some more? Denise says no. Are there other questions related to that? Did that give you a sense of what happened? And I'm holding back on talking about what we see as the potential for UBI in the future. It is great. And you're going to be hearing about that, I think. Yes, sir.
What kind of interaction or synergy is there between something like EEM and UBI and your kind of efforts?
It's a really good question. Both of these are good questions. There is a synergy. In fact, there's a unique synergy, particularly between UBI, EEM, and Mission Ukraine, the fellow that preaches on national television. And the way that it happens is they're all members of the church. They attend each other's events. They love each other. They talk, and they say, hey, I got an idea. I'll say, okay, if you do that, then we'll contribute literature. We'll, our people will come. You can come, and we'll have you speak at our seminars. And so it's a kind of an all-wheel drive kind of thing. I haven't found any like that in any other continent where mission work is going on. I'm not saying there aren't good things. I've been in Brazil and Africa recently, and there's some good works going on, but there's a unique synergy there, but it's unofficial because, we don't have mission societies. We don't have a hierarchy and all the stuff, which is pluses and minuses to that, but that's the way we do it. The churches more starting to come around and have more interaction with each other. One of the things Denise and I hope to do in our part of the ministry of helping the church grow and strengthen is to foster events to which we would invite people from a lot of different congregations, and we would worship together, we would study things, and have some cooperative efforts to do good in the community. And so some of this is being done. More seems to be coming in the future, near future, I hope. So there's a lot of need for it. It's coming. There's a great example of it that's been very effective. And so we look forward to more of that happening in Ukraine. One thing that was done, as whoever's going to ask the next question, please be ready to articulate it. But the Lubbock Christian University course came over. So there were 2 concerts in Donetsk. One concert was just for members of the church. Sent out the word, this is just for members of the church. The second one was for everybody in the community. The auditorium that seated, I don't know how many hundred, close to 1,000, but in the first meeting there were 700 members of the church that came from all over that part of Ukraine. And when they came in, they looked at each other like, we meet with a group of 10, we meet with a group of 20 or 30 or 5, and look at this. Look at this. We had no idea we were like this. So that had a big effect. And of course, the one for anybody from the community, songs were sung, obviously, since the chorus was there. Message was presented, and a lot of response from the community. The beauty of the music was really effective. Another question. Yes, sir.
How strong is the church in the southern part of Ukraine? Looks like Kyiv is in the northern part, in the southern part of the country, other parts of the country.
Yeah, southern part of Ukraine, there are some notable works, like in Mariupol, in Zaporozhye. Denise has been to Zaporozhye, got some things going there. Trying to think, southern Ukraine, those are sizable groups. There's a lot of other groups that are active. And, there were some in Crimea. They had to move north, Kherson, some places like that. So I can't quantify that for you right now exactly, except there are notable works. There are a lot of groups that are there that weren't there not too long ago. And so there's some activity in southern Ukraine. Central Ukraine, not just because of Kyiv, but in Poltava and other places like that, there's Ivano-Frankivsk, which is more to the west. There's more churches in the west now than there ever were. So anyway, but if I tell you any more than that, I'll just be fishing. So, but I can find out. I will find out. Another question. So our view, and it's not too late to ask a question if one comes to your mind. So our view is that, as I mentioned earlier, there's been this foundation laid. And our very strong sense is that although things are different, one of the differences is, especially in Kyiv, it's kind of its own economy because it's the capital. But, growing up under communism, you just wait to be told what to do. And that's a mentality that's that affects everything, and it's hard to get out of, even though there's been some progress made. But in Kyiv, there is a very pronounced middle class, entrepreneurial middle class in mid-30s, some 20s and mid-30s. And one of the groups that Lisa and I are doing some consulting with, in their vision session, they identified reaching the middle class was an absolute priority. We had to learn how to do this, and we had to be able to do it well. Reach these entrepreneurial people. They have all these kids. The video that you saw of those young families, a lot of them starting their own businesses, work for people that do. I mean, and one of the ministries there we work with has a Ukrainian board member who is now, I think this is the first one, who is giving out of his own income to support the ministry, a local one. He started a marketing company. He has 121 employees. He's about 35. Very committed member of the church, on the board of this ministry. So that's one of the big changes, is before we have reached a lot of people, a lot of whom were war refugees. A lot of great work was done, by the way, and taking care of the needs of people displaced when Ukraine was invaded. And the reputation of the church was growing. So I'm going to offer an invitation in just a minute, but I've left myself 2 minutes to tell you one more story. So I was talking to Sergei, who was the minister of religion. Whether he believed in God or not, I'm really not sure at that point, but he's a government official to keep tabs on all the religious groups and what they're doing. And it seemed like to be a pretty good guy. So we were visiting one day about some ideas. And he said, there's 49 religious groups that are operating in this Donbass region. And so he said, I had the idea we needed to do more to help the children, the orphans. And so I sent out word to all of the groups saying that I wanted them to participate in an effort to do more for the children. And they all said, oh yes, we'll do it. He said, when the day came, when the time came, you were the only people that showed up. And he said, so this is what I know about you, meaning collectively our brethren, Churches of Christ. He said, you do what you say you'll do, you do it well, and you have no ulterior motives. I thought, if I can have that thought of me, I don't need to live any longer. I mean, what a great way to be recognized by the community. And so that kind of service done in God's name, and people in faith stepping through doors that God opened, I mean, which there's just so many stories to tell about that, has had an impact. Foundation's there. God's not through. God's not through. In fact, maybe he's just beginning, because now there's a foundation that we can build on. But there are resources needed, there are more people, and there are people that don't understand the story's not through. The first chapter's been written, maybe. So we need to go on. And so we hope to be a part of that, and you're a part of that through your support and your involvement. Okay, I'm about to offer the invitation. We're going to get through on time. Any other questions before we do that? Of course, you can talk to us individually afterwards. I'll warn you, don't ask me a question about politics or philosophy, because we'll be here for a while about what God's doing, about perspective. Operating in Ukraine and in the United States, other places in the world, and having a lot of discussion with people about God, about belief, some young, some old, some pretty old. I've come to understand that God's not through with anybody yet. And we think of the invitation that's given as a time for someone to come forward and confess Christ and be baptized and raised to new life. And that's certainly part of it. But it's also a time to think about, so what's God doing? What's he doing in my life? What could I be for God? What is it I have done that I need to acknowledge, maybe repent of? To myself, to God, maybe publicly, I don't know. But this is a great time in an invitation, whether you do it publicly, to respond to the message, be baptized, whether you do it within your heart to God, whether you do it to someone else that you need to, this is a great time to do that. And so we're about to sing this song. We used to call it a song of encouragement, because the believers are singing, and we want those that need to respond to God to respond, and we want to encourage them. So let's stand and sing this song, and if you're moved to respond to God, this is a great time.